Hi there, Fulfil here, and welcome to video number 3 of my short video series about license plating in Business Central using package tracking. Today we're going to take the complexity a bit further, and we will use both package tracking and lot tracking with expiry date for an item with multiple units of measure. So let's look into it. First of all, let's see how the setup for an item that requires lot tracking and package tracking with multiple units of measure is done. So I have my item 1025, my 50 liters oil drum, set up with a base unit of measure of pieces, and the alternative unit of measure that I will use for purchases is pallet. And you can see here that a pallet is made of 6 pieces. At the same time, I have an item tracking code that includes both package tracking and lot tracking. You can see if I enter in view mode for my lot tracking here, I have lot tracking, lot numbers enabled. Everything is on, particularly very important, the lot warehouse tracking. But I don't need the inbound info on. That is something that is usually for companies that have a very complex quality assurance or quality control, let's say, policies. In that case, you want to switch that on, but maybe that is something for the next video. And I have also package tracking. Of course, my package tracking is now called pallet tracking, something that I set up on the inventory setup page. You can see in my previous video when I describe how to set up pallet tracking. Again, package tracking, everything is on except from the info must exist on inbound and outbound, something that for this video is not required. This functionality allows you to store information about the package tracking. It is useful if you use package tracking as a way to track your containers where you need to store additional information about your, let's say, shipment containers. However, for pallet, it's really not necessary. So we're going to keep it off. And so the setup is complete, and let's see how this functionality works when I receive an item and I use a location with basic WMS. So if I go in purchasing and I create a new purchase order, I'm going to create an order for a vendor, and I'm going to use my item 1025. I'm not going to use the location London because that is for full WMS, but I want to use Liverpool. I'm going to purchase only 2 pallets, so let's say 150 each. It's all right. Fine, I can release this order, and then I can initiate the inbound process by creating an inventory put away. Both options are always enabled. Business Central will never create a pick for an order or a put away for a sales, right? Because the source document describes the direction, let's say, of our inventory movement. A purchase order is an inbound movement, therefore. Business Central will only create the inventory put away, even if both options are on. I click OK, and I have my put away. So let's look at this put away by opening the line and then, of course, the full page. As expected, I have one line, which is the purchase line, that defaults to the bin code that I previously used for this item. My location is set up to use the last bin code. So here I have the pallet number and the lot number with the expiry date, and I have a quantity or 2. Nothing strange so far. I'm receiving the item. I give a random pallet number, but I also want now, I also must, because this item is set up to require lot number, I need to enter the lot number. So in this case, let's say I put a lot number that tells me something about the expiry date, for example, 2024-12, means it will expire on the 31st of December 2024. Actually, the reason why I get this date is because I've used this lot number already. So let's choose something that I don't have. So 2025-12. Perfect. It's a new lot number. So expiry date is going to be 31st 12 2025. But in this case, of course, I don't want to create this entry using the pallet number for both pallets. I want this information to be for one pallet only. And then I want to use the split line to create the second line. By default, you can see Business Central will copy the item tracking from one line to the second. Here I can change the pallet number and give it a new pallet number. And if I want to, I can even change the expiry date. So sometimes happens, your vendor sends you 2 pallets and 2 pallets have stock with different lot number expiry date. So in this case, let's say it's going to be November. So it will be the 30th of November 2025, right? So 2 pallets with 2 pallets number in the same bin code. It's not a problem. Actually, I want to use a different bin code because I used this bin code in the past. I already have inventory there, so I don't really want to use it. I know I want to use this one because I know it's empty. It says here empty, right? So I don't introduce any noise in my testing. And I'm going to use a different bin for the other pallet. Okay, so 2 bins in 2 pallets with 2 different lot numbers and expiry date, quantity. It's fine, so I can post, and I only want to receive it because I don't need to post the invoice. That's something that we don't cover at this stage. Excellent, so far so good. So if I go back to my item lists and I filter so that I can see only the items that I want, there we go. So I have received stock and it shows 41 because I have been testing this functionality on the height of this video. These are the 2 lines that I just received, and as I was expecting, of course, I have 2 pallet numbers, and I have a quantity of 6 each. The reason why I see 6 and not 1 is because the item ledger entry is in the base unit of measure. The unit of measure doesn't show here because I don't have it enabled, but you can use personalization to show the unit of measure and it will show. But again, it's always in the base unit of measure. So 6 pieces in 1 pallet each. This is the pallet number. I have 6 pieces. And this is the other pallet number. So far, so good. I can also see the lot number here if I made the field visible. It's just a matter of personalization, right? But at this stage, I don't care because I'm more concerned, let's say, I'm more interested, not really concerned. I'm more interested in the actual bin content because we're talking about warehouse entries here. And the bin content is the more interesting part. You can see that I have in my B01A, I have here the 6 pieces and I have the rest here. Again, if I drill down here, I see the warehouse entries, right? And the warehouse entries now show the lot number and expiry date. And of course, also the pallet number, right? So all the information here are stored, which means that traceability is always maintained. Very good for, okay, simple warehouse. It's 1 pallet, 1 lot number. The same logic now applies to inventory movement. What happens if you want to break a pallet and move some of the pieces away? The same. I can use an item reclass journal. And with my item reclass journal, I can now, let's say, break a pallet and maintain the lot number. Because, of course, we had 2 item tracking codes, I need to take both into account. And this is why the complexity, okay, plays a role. So let's use get bin content. I only want to use my location Liverpool. And I only want my item 1025. And I'm going to click OK. And the system will return everything they have. Perfect. I'm not interested in the bin A because that's all data. So I'm going to delete these lines. The system is giving me a warning message that says that item tracking is defined. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. I will show you in a moment. First line, second line. I will show you in a moment why this is important, because the item tracking information, which is pallet number and lot number, don't appear on my journal I need to look at the tracking lines, and you see that the tracking line is specific for the item journal line. So on this line here, which is this contains 6 pieces of this item in my bin B01A, I have these information. Again, if in the same bin I had more than one pallet or more than one lot number, additional lines will show on this page, right? But it's essentially the system is telling me what I have in this bin. I have this lot number and the pallet number, right? And of course the same if I click here. Here I will have a different one. You can see it's a different pallet. It's one ending with number 1, and this expires in November. So let's say I'm not concerned about what expires in December, because it expires later. I can delete it, I can delete the line, and I'm only concerned about the pallet that expires first. Now I can simply move the entire pallet into a new bin, and that will be okay. But in my case, I want to split the pallet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the item tracking line, and I'm going to update this one to 3. I only want to move half the pallet here, right? And I want to give it a new pallet number, which is going to be, I don't know, B, right? So the content that I'm not moving will stay on this pallet number. I'm not changing the pallet number of the items that are not moving. Only the items that are moving, the 3 pieces, so half the pallet, will get a new pallet number. But I'm not going to change the lot number. The lot number is going to be the same. So essentially, full traceability, again, when I break the pallet, is maintained. I updated the quantity here, and I'm going to give it a new bin code. Let's say from B01B, I want to move it to, let's say, to 802B, all right? Which maybe it's my pick phase, so that my team, the warehouse team, can go and pick it. So new pallet number for 3 pieces, new bin code for 3 pieces on my item 1025, post. And this is creating essentially item ledger entries. The journal was successfully posted. If I go back and if I look at my bin content, right, now I can see that I only have 3 left in my bin B01B. If I click here, I can see the adjustment, let's say the movement that took -3 from this bin, right? From this pallet, essentially, right? There we go. And let's see, the rest should be here, if I'm not mistaken, 802, right? There we go. The movement, right, that I created here for the item that expires. Oh, I think it was this one. Yes, I think it was this one. I'm getting confused. Yes, there we go. Right? Perfect. So full traceability is maintained, and I just moved half a pallet from one bin to another. I created a new pallet number, and I kept the lot number, right? So far, nothing special. Of course, in the sales, when I do the pick note, the logic is going to be the same, right? What happens now if I want to record in one pallet 3 pieces with one lot number and one expiry day, and the other 3 pieces have a different expiry day? Let's say the supplier sent me a sort of a mixed pallet. It's not really mixed because it's the same item, but it's an item with multiple expiry dates. If you work in food and pharma, this happens unfortunately very often, because the production run cannot really meet exact quantities. But of course, for logistics purposes, companies try to maximize the space, and therefore they put everything in one pallet. So you might end up with a pallet with, that contains one SKU, one item. However, on the same pallet, you have different lot numbers. If you want to manage that kind of level of complexity, you need to use full WMS, because that allows you to allocate the item tracking to the individual lines. It's something that you cannot do with simple WMS. So let's run through an exercise, and let's create another purchase order for the same item, but this time I want to receive the purchase order into a location with full WMS. So I'm going to create a new purchase order. And I'm going to choose the same vendor. And I want my item 1025. And now I'm going to keep the location London. Unit to measure is always pallet because this is in the item card. And this time I'm also receiving 2 pallets, right? 150 each, let's say. Okay, excellent. So this one is released. And now I want to create a warehouse receipt, and I want to receipt this order. I'm going to click new. I'm going to let the system create a number for me, and I want to choose London. Perfect. I'm going to use prepare to get source document, and this is my order number, right? The last that I created. Of course, nothing stops me from getting multiple purchase orders into the same warehouse receipt. That's actually the purpose of a warehouse receipt, is to get multiple documents into one. But again, let's take with this one example, right? So the warehouse receipt looks pretty much like the inventory put away, and in fact, it's essentially very similar. It's a warehouse activity, right? Of a type warehouse receipt. The main difference between the warehouse receipt and inventory put away, for tracking purposes, there are of course many other differences, is that the lot tracking details are not defined at line level. In fact, you see there is no field here, there is no option to update the package number, in our case our pallet number, or the lot tracking. This is done on a sort of a sub page. And this is where things gets interesting, because if I find the sub page here that shows item tracking lines, you may see that I'm receiving 2 pallets here, right? If I look at the item tracking line, something very interesting happens now. And the very interesting part is that the quantity of the item tracking is defined by the base unit of measure. Unlike what happened in the inventory put away, where the item tracking is defined at line level, therefore it can only work with the unit of measure of the activity line, essentially. But in our case was the inventory put away, and the unit of measure was in pallet. So now I have the option to define the item tracking by pieces, because that's the base unit of measure, and it shows 12 because 6 pieces by pallet, and it's 2 pallets. So what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to actually create the lot numbers. But I want to do something a bit more advanced. I want to assign the package number first. I want to let Business Central create a pallet number for me, right? And then I'm going to say, look, this is 6. This is 1 pallet number, okay? And the pallet number here is 2025. This time, let's say it's 10, okay? And the expiry date here is going to be, I'm going to use the calendar here to show you how it works. You can always type the date, but you can always choose one from here. So I'm going to use the 31st of October 2025, right? And this is for 1 pallet, right? And then I'm going to get Business Central to actually create another one, package number, very good, it's the 2nd pallet. And in the 2nd pallet now, 3 of these are for, let's say, this date here, right? And so it's going to be the 30th of September 2025. And in this 3rd and final line, I want to keep the same pallet number, because again, this is 1 pallet. So this is 1 pallet, 6 pieces. These 2 lines are 1 pallet, 3 pieces each. And these 3 pieces have a different expiry date, which is going to be 08. So this is going to be the 31st of August 2025. And I have line number 3, right? Again, a bit complex, but again, this is the complex that it comes when you have palletized goods and you want to track pallet numbers, and your suppliers unfortunately, has the bad habit of sending you pallet with the same item but different units of measure. So everything is defined now, 2 pallets, 3 different expire dates, and I'm going to close this page, and this page 1 is saved. And again, I don't have the bin number here because it's irrelevant at this stage. What I want to do, I'm going to receive everything in my receipt area, which is a sort of a loading bay, okay? I want to post the receipt, and now Business Central is going to create an inventory put away, right? Number of put away activities created 1. Perfect. I can also use the put away worksheet, but that's again a bit even more advanced, something again for another video. I click OK, and now I want to see the inventory put away. Sorry, warehouse put away. There we go. And now in my inventory put away, I have something which is quite interesting, right? I don't have a default bin on this location for this item, but I want, therefore the bin code is not defined. This might be a bit complex, but if we look at the line by one, it will make sense. So the first line is telling me to take this item from the receiving area, and it's telling me to take this pallet number, and it's showing me that of course it's a lot number, Y expiry date, and it's a full pallet. So it's asking me to take this pallet and place it in a bin. Let's say I want to put it in my there's a B01A, which is empty, which is good. Now I have 4 more lines. Again, it's 2 pairs of take and place essentially. Why is it so? Because even though it's 1 pallet, the one that ends with 12, I have 2 expiry dates. So your warehouse put away lines are always defined at item tracking level. So now I can choose to break the pallet in 2 when I put it away. I don't need to put it away as a full pallet and break it afterwards. I still can, of course, but by default, Business Central allows me to say that for pallet ending in 12, the 3 pieces, 0.5 pallet, which is 3 pieces, can go to 1 bin, right? Let's say to go to this bin, while the rest can go to a different bin or to the same bin, right? It's my choice. The good thing is that, again, I can choose it now to break the pallet in 2, and this is something that often happens because for rotation purposes, right? If you receive a pallet with 2 different units of measure, you might want to break the pallet in 2 so that your team can pick up this stock first because it expires first, and this one last. Again, if you have FIFO enabled, picking by FIFO, so first expire, first out, the business will do it for you. Business Center will do it for you regardless. But in this case, it might be nice to receive this one into a complete different bin, so you don't mix things up, right? And there we go. It's a lot of complexity to handle, but you can see the Business Center supports it totally. I registered to put away. If I don't have any capacity constraints, like the bin is already full, or I exceed the total weight, total volume, I will get a warning. But of course, I don't have capacity enabled in this sandbox, therefore not a problem. If I now go back to my sales, to my items list, and I filter to see my items, now I want to see my bin content, because this is an interesting part. And let's filter on location London, because this is what I'm interested in. Here you can see it's in pallet, so half a pallet is in this bin. The other half a pallet is in this bin, and the full pallet is in this other bin, right? I also have something in the receipt area that I still need to receive, right? Something that I created when I was testing. If I drill down, I can see these 3 units, these 3 pieces with this lot number and this expiry date, and it's half a pallet, right? And so for the other line, this expires in August, And so for the third line, I'm going to have the full pallet of the item that expires in October, right? And what happens if I now want to move and I want to change the pallet, similar to what we discussed before with an item reclass journal. This time though, because location London is set up with advanced, let's say full WMS, I cannot use an item reclass journal. I need to use an warehouse reclass journal. Warehouse reclassification journal. And now I can enter my warehouse document. Let's say 004. I can enter my item number. You can see that there isn't much automation here. There isn't much I can do to automatically populate this one. This is designed to work very well with warehouse handhelds, where warehouse users go around the warehouse, they scan barcodes, and and the mobile application will push to Business Central the details of the journal. But still, users can post the reclassification journal in Business Central using the desktop application. So let's open a pallet and let's create a new pallet number. I can go to related and find the bin content, and this is what I have. So let's say I want to break this pallet 801A, 801, and you can see I have 6 lines here, essentially 2 half pallets, and let's say that I want to again further break this pallet that contains 3 singles, 3 pieces, right? Half a pallet, yeah, into I move 1 piece of this half a pallet into a new bin, right? And create a new container, let's say number, a new package number, right? So I'm going to choose 801A, but also I need to take note of which one I want to, right? Because I have the lot number here and also the pallet number. So I'm going to break pallet that ends with number 11. And of course I need to tell the system that this is the lot, right? So lot ending in, with expiry date on October, for pallet ending in with 11 from A01. So I'm going to put from bin 801, right? And of course I get an error because by default the journal is in pieces, but here I'm moving pallets. And now everything works fine. And I'm going to put this one into, let's say, actually I want to put it in QC, okay? Quality control. Because 1 piece of this half a pallet it's for quality check, right? A good example. So now I need to find the item tracking line, of course the quantity. So it's going to be, again, I want to move the entire quantity, like 0.5 pallet. Everything in QC. I want to look at the item numbers here, item tracking number, and you can see that it doesn't populate automatically because there can be more item tracking by for the same item and the same unit of measure. This is what advanced warehouse, the full WMS allows us to do. So it gives us more flexibility, although we lose a bit of automation, of course. But I can click here and I can see what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for lot number ending in October, and with a pallet number ending in with number 11. There we go, right? And the pallet number here again ends with 11. Okay, excellent. So here you can see, just like what I did in my previous example, I can decide to break the pallet, for example, and have only like 1 item, and create, right, a new pallet number here that ends with B, right? And I can essentially split the pallet and just move 1, right? Or I can just simply, move the entire quantity, as for my example, in QB, in QC bin. And again, if I want just to create a new pallet number, just to differentiate, right, this pallet from another one. Nothing stops me from giving this item in the item reclass journal a different lot number, but that's something, again, for quality assurance purposes. And we probably can cover that in the next, the post, essentially, right? So I can close this one, and here is my one movement. The good thing about reclassification journals is that I can create more than one line. In fact, we can probably do something even more interesting on this one. And for example, let's see that what I have in this one, in my rec bin, you see all the warehouse entries in my receipt bin, right? That I can move. I can move. I can just change the pallet, let's say, from this one to another one. Let's see what I have here. Again, 1 and -5. So this essentially it's half a pallet that was that came from breaking the pallet, and I also have the number 11, right? So we can essentially move things around, or we can use other other lines. So let's clear this one, and let's stick with the original plan. And I'm going to register this one. And if everything is fine, we should get exactly this nice message. And now we should be able to see the warehouse. I should have the bin content, right? And now I see that my location London, I have the QC. In QC I have half a pallet, and this half a pallet has the new pallet number, right? Pallet number information 11B. And here I can see that in my pallet number 11B I have this item, right? Something that comes through the item, essentially item tracking information card. In this instance is the package number information card, but it shows as pallet again because I changed the name, right? We can use the same logic when we pick. And with this last example, I'm going to pick, say, a full pallet of this item, but I'm going to get my warehouse to build a pallet, picking individual pieces from different bins and consolidate everything in one bin, everything in one pallet, and ship one pallet. Because this is what full WMS can do with package tracking and lot tracking. So let's create a new order. And let's create a new order for a company. This one. Actually, let's choose this one because it already goes to London. Actually, it's responsibility sent to another location, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to pick my item 25 here, 1025, and I'm going to ship from London. And I'm going to ship one pallet, right? So there's no need to break down the quantity in singles here. I can just sell one pallet. I'm going to release this one, right? And then I can create a warehouse shipment. This time I can create a warehouse shipment from the actual order, right? There we go. And I'm going to ship from my, let's say, shipment bin, no problem. And I'm going to update the shipment bin here, okay? Very good. And unlike what we can do with a simple warehouse, even though I have the option to add the item tracking lines, I cannot do anything here. I get a warning because the system tells me that I cannot assign lot or serial, of course, also package tracking on this document because the line is done through a warehouse activity. In this case, it's our pick, warehouse pick. So I'm going to create a pick. The system, I'm going to set a break bulk so that I can do. I can say break a pallet if I don't have the item unit of measure available. So let me look at the pick lines and let me see if the system has found what I need. There we go. It found half a pallet here. So it did it automatically because I have picking by FIFO. So it found the quantity in the two, right? I need to update the pallet and the lot number information depending on what I have available. So this now gets a bit complicated. It's a bit counterintuitive also because the pallet number is before the bin code. So if I get the system, if I click here and I want to see what I have available, you can see that the lot number information, the pallet number information show. However, you see the total quantity that it's in this bin, the total quantity, sorry, for this lot number and the pallet number. I also have available quantity, but I also have the column showing bin content. And you can see that bin content is 3 on this lot only. The reason for this rather counterintuitive number, it's because this page, or even better, the totals of this page, the numbers here, the quantity, is filtered. And we don't see the filter because this filter is applied to the calculation. The filter is applied to this code. So it would be more accurate to do this, because Business Central is getting the item from the location, from the right location, from the actual bin code, because it's using bin ranking. Sorry, I made a mistake before. It's not because I have picking code by FIFO. It's because I have a bin ranking. So it chooses to go for one bin. It finds the quantity available. It can't fulfill the full quantity and goes to the next one, right? But then the only option that I have here to pick the right pallet is to pick from a pallet that's available in that bin. And now you can see that I have quantity base, 3 pieces. And on that bin, I only have this lot and this pallet. So I need to choose this one from here. And so it automatically does that. And the same from the A. This time is going to be this lot from this pallet. There we go. Right? And I need to do the same here. So if this one is pallet 11, it's the same here. Now the lot number list is further filtered, and therefore I only have one option, which is good, which is the right one. There we go. Here, of course, I have this one, which is the option bin content number 3. Excellent. And now I can pick using a proper license plating, which essentially is telling me to sell, pick and ship one pallet, but the system is finding half a pallet in one bin and half a pallet in another bin, and it tells the users to go and find these pallet numbers from these bins. Now that the warehouse pick is complete, right, I can register the pick. Very good. And what I have now, I have the quantity on this essentially on the shipment bin. Now that the pick is done, I have the quantity in the shipment bin. I should be able to see the bin content list, but I'm not sure whether it does a perfect. Yes, so it shows that I have 1 in the shipment bin. Another thing that I can do now at this stage is to use the reclass functionality to get these 2 half pallets in my shipment bin and create another pallet number. So the new pallet is essentially consolidated, even better. The 2 half pallets are consolidated into one new pallet, and I can give this these 2 half pallets a new one, a new pallet number, so that I can send an advanced shipment notification to my customer saying that you will receive a pallet of this item, and this is the pallet number, and these are the lot numbers, because if you look at the item tracking lines, you can see that I have 2 pallets of 2 different lot numbers with 2 different expire dates. So we received a mixed pallet from our supplier. We are shipping 2 half pallets to our customer, and again, nothing stops me from creating a completely new pallet that I can send to my supplier, right? Again, it's something that we can do at a later stage. So I can post a shipment. I want to ship only. I can ship an invoice. And yes, everything was fine. The setup was fine, and we managed to ship 1 pallet by using the license plating functionalities in Business Central. So a lot to take on. There is a lot of complexity here. This is not the maximum level of complexity you can get in Business Central, because we can also use serial numbers, but that is going to be very complex and something that I cannot probably cover in one single demo session, probably something that requires 2 or 3. Let me know if you want to explore this functionality further, and I hope it's been helpful. I can always respond to any of the questions you might have. Just reply to this email newsletter and we'll get back to you. Find me on LinkedIn, where I'm quite active, and again, I'm happy to hear from you. Thanks for watching.